As the villain's sweet little wife, my daily task is thin and monotonous. Every time Kevin Thompson, the villain, outsmarts the male protagonist, I simply say, "You did great, honey." It's such a cliché, yet Kevin Thompson never tires of it. He relishes it. Welcome to the Hee Hee Story channel. Don't forget to subscribe to the Hee Hee Story channel. Story begins. But tonight, I messed up. It all started when I got into Lester Bridgman's car after the party. Kevin's nemesis. Well, to be precise, it wasn't exactly Lester who coaxed me into the car. His girlfriend had ruined my dress and kindly offered to help me buy a new one. So I tagged along with them, more than happy to make them pay. Kevin Thompson was nowhere to be seen all night, but somehow, his car showed up behind us on the road, tailing us with precision. For those 5 seconds when he hit the accelerator, he probably thought Lester was kidnapping me. That wasn't it. Not even close. After all, I'm married to Lester's brother. Yes, you heard that right. Kevin and Lester are brothers by blood, sharing a mother but not a father. After their parents split, Kevin's mom remarried, bringing Lester into the world. Meanwhile, their father, now free, drowned himself in endless affairs, barely returning home. Lester grew up under the warmth of love and sunshine, while Kevin, on the other hand, was either being yanked around by his nanny or pinched by his father's mistresses with sharp nails until his cheeks bled. Kevin didn't waste any time once he graduated. He overthrew his father and, when the old man died, scattered his ashes so thoroughly that the illegitimate children who came looking for a share of the inheritance were left with nothing but dust. But the story didn't end there. A few years younger, Lester stepped into the business world, and suddenly, he and Kevin found themselves in direct competition. Every time Kevin met Lester, his face remained taut with barely concealed fury. Tonight was no different. Kevin dragged me out of Lester's car, tossed me into the passenger seat of his own, and fastened my seatbelt with a stern, silent efficiency. We drove in silence until we reached the parking lot, where Kevin stepped out first. He circled around, pinning me to the car door as soon as I emerged. His cold scent enveloped me, and as I looked up, his deep eyes reflected a restraint that could barely contain the intensity simmering underneath. "Why did you get into Lester Bridgman's car?" he asked, his voice low and cutting. I poked his chest with my finger. "His girlfriend was in the car too. You saw her. She said she'd buy me a new dress after ruining mine. It just happened that Lester was driving," I explained, my voice softening. Kevin's gaze didn't waver as he lowered his head, his nose brushing against mine. "Was the dress even worth it?" he coaxed. I shook my head gently, my nose brushing back and forth against his. "No, it wasn't." The tension eased from Kevin's shoulders, a faint smirk tugging at the corners of his lips. At that moment, I remembered that by now, Violet Smith, Lester's girlfriend, should be the one under scrutiny, not me. After all, it was her who I was supposed to douse in wine. But here we were. It all started with a dream. In that dream, Kevin would eventually drive Lester into bankruptcy and ruin, only to be destroyed himself in a devastating reversal of fate. And me? I was nothing more than a faceless tool in the story. When Kevin was happy, I was happy. When Kevin was angry, I mirrored his rage. Later, I began to realize we were all just characters in a book. The ups and downs, the twists and turns, it was all too predictable. There was a protagonist, a villain, low points and climaxes. And I was the villain's wife, the kind who would pour red wine all over Violet Smith at a party for no good reason. These actions had consequences. After Violet was ruined, she went upstairs to change and ended up meeting Mandel King, the male supporting character. When Mandel's love was rejected, he teamed up with Kevin to scheme against Lester, leaving Lester caught in a deadly trap. But I didn't want to throw that glass of wine. It felt like I was cursed. My grip on the glass was firm, yet some invisible force was twisting my wrist, forcing the wine out of my hand. What was happening? Why couldn't I change the course of events? And then, Violet Smith grabbed my hand just as the wine was about to spill. Instead of ending up on her, the wine drenched me. "Well, aren't you a clumsy one? Don't you have any manners?" I started to say, only for my words to be cut off as Violet gently draped a shawl over me and helped wipe off the wine. She was so kind. I got into her car. Moments later, Kevin Thompson's car appeared in the rearview mirror, closing in fast. When Kevin finally picked me up, it led to that tense scene in the parking lot. He grabbed my chin, inspecting me closely. "Had a drink?" he asked, tilting my head back slightly. No, I mumbled through squished lips. It all spilled. Thanks to Lester and his lot. Kevin chuckled softly and kissed me. Good girl. I believe you. Just as his laughter faded, the sound of tires on pavement echoed closer. I glanced up, only to be blinded by headlights. Instinctively, I burrowed into Kevin's chest, his heartbeat steady beneath my ear. Kevin's irritation was palpable. The car came to a stop, and Kevin's glare could have frozen flames. I turned my head just in time to see Lester Bridgman step out of the car. Here we go again. Another fight. I tugged on Kevin's arm, intending to tell him to hold back, but that same invisible force twisted my words. Go ahead, honey. Punch him. Lester Bridgman hesitated, taken aback. What? Kevin and I locked eyes, and I saw a trace of amusement flicker in his gaze. His voice was low, lazy. Go back to the car, sweetheart. Listen to some music. Kevin was one of those rare husbands who would follow any command to a T. But had I forgotten something? I grabbed his arm just before he could march over to Lester. Wait. Let's see what he wants. Lester didn't look at Kevin. Instead, he stretched out his hand, directly addressing me. You left your earring in my car, sis-in-law. Sure enough, I had. Kevin stood silently by as I retrieved the earring. Just as Lester was about to drive off, Kevin's cold voice cut through the air. Watch what you call her in public. Lester shrugged it off with a casual glance, his eyes lingering on me for a beat longer than necessary before he left. Kevin didn't seem to notice, but I couldn't help but wonder. Was there more to this visit? Nevertheless, I was relieved Kevin hadn't picked up on it. Otherwise, he might have suspected Lester of plotting something more sinister, like kidney theft. Looking back, I regretted ever going to that party just to flaunt my new designer dress. Kevin was far too hard to appease. I thought I had smoothed things over in the parking lot, but when I came out of the shower later, I found him brooding in his study, lost in the shadows of his own thoughts. Without turning on the lights, I approached him and kicked off my shoes, curling up beside him on the sofa. Are you upset? I asked. He hummed, his voice heavy with gloom. Just as I prepared myself to listen to his grievances, something cold grazed my earlobe, making me shiver. What are you doing? I asked, squirming at the ticklish sensation. Kevin glanced at the earring he was holding between his fingers. I was just trying to figure out how it managed to fall off. So that was what had been troubling him all this time. I had over-dramatized the situation. A girl complimented me on my earrings, so I took them off, I muttered, my fingers idly playing with the fabric of his suit. The smooth texture distracted me for a moment until he slid the earring back into place, pulling me back to the present. Can you please stop playing this dangerous game with Lester? We'll both end up in trouble if this keeps going. But the words wouldn't come. It was as if something lodged them in my throat, refusing to let them out. This was the third time now. My thoughts, my actions, all being twisted by some unseen force. What? Kevin prompted, his smile teasing. Do you want something? Kevin leaned back into the sofa, the distorted city lights casting a strange glow over his face. He looked oddly pleased as he said, Oh, by the way, I bought you a little island. Really? That's amazing. I exclaimed, any sense of foreboding instantly forgotten as I snuggled closer to him. The deeper I sank into his embrace, the less I thought about the words I should have said. But when Lester Bridgman called later, telling me he had found the other earring, I agreed to meet him again. At the club, Lester walked in, his black coat trailing a cool breeze behind him. He draped it neatly over his arm and took a seat on the sofa, crossing his legs in a relaxed manner. He had matured since the first time I saw him at my wedding. His boyish charm now replaced with a sharper, more composed demeanor. Lester, I said, resting my head on my hand and gesturing to my ear with my other hand. I only wore one earring that day, you know. He smiled. I know. The parking lot, and now this. Both times you had something to discuss with me, I remarked. Lester leaned forward, his voice calm. Sis-in-law, Violet lost an important case last week. After some investigation I found out. I interrupted gently. It was me. I was aiming for you but ended up hitting her by mistake. Lester blinked in surprise, clearly not expecting such blunt honesty. Was he shocked by my mistake or by my candid confession? In truth, It didn't matter whether I pretended or laid everything bare. Lester had seen through all my schemes. To lie now would only make me look foolish. Lester Bridgman wasn't one to fall for petty tricks like these. So why bother with such feeble attempts at sabotage like I used to? He hesitated for a moment, as if surprised by my straightforwardness, but his concern lingered. Sis-in-law, he began cautiously. Violet doesn't really understand business, so could you, maybe give her some leeway? He paused, then added almost pleadingly, please. Lester was humbling himself for love. I stood up, ready to leave. I already told you it was an accident. Why won't you believe me? Oh, and be careful out there. Don't go charging headfirst. You're no match for Kevin right now. Thanks, he replied. I turned back and shot him a sharp glare. That wasn't me being considerate of you. Lester sighed, nodding in resignation. The hallway of the club was long and quiet, its depths disappearing into the shadows. As I rounded a corner, passing the restroom, I overheard laughter, mixed with a name that made my stomach twist. Kevin Thompson is still as ruthless as ever. Sooner or later, someone's going to teach him a lesson. A sneering voice followed. With his messed up family background, he's bound to have some serious psychological issues, don't you think? My expression darkened. I picked up my phone and raised my voice just enough for them to hear. Alice, where's my husband, Kevin? I came here, but I don't see him anywhere. The laughter ceased, replaced by an awkward silence that seemed to swallow the air around me. I kept the act going, offering a nonchalant aha a couple of times. He's here too, just upstairs. A familiar voice suddenly chimed in behind me, breaking the tension. Lester Bridgman. I murmured to myself. Oh, he's having fun, isn't he? Of course, I knew Kevin was likely handling business, but hearing those insults directed at him felt like they were aimed at me. And even though Kevin was the one being criticized, I climbed the stairs like I was the one bearing the world's grievances. Through the glass, I saw Kevin playing pool. He wore a sleek black shirt, the sleeves rolled up just enough to reveal the silver watch on his wrist. His long, graceful fingers gripped the cue with practiced precision, a cigarette dangling from his lips as he focused intently on his shot. As the ball rolled into the pocket, cheers erupted around him. A waitress in uniform approached with a tray of drinks, waiting patiently by his side. When she leaned in too close, Kevin casually blocked her with his arm, not letting anyone invade his space. Are you sure you don't want a drink, Mr. Thompson? She persisted, her hand almost brushing his shoulder. Kevin hesitated for a split second before flashing a smile. He removed the cigarette from his mouth, extinguishing it in the ashtray. Then, taking the glass from her tray, he downed it in one smooth motion. His voice was deep and rich. Will that do? I nodded approvingly from behind the glass. Yeah, that'll do. Kevin smiled and introduced me to the group. My wife. The men chuckled politely, exchanging pleasantries. Ah, Mrs. Thompson. Still as beautiful as ever. Kevin's smile deepened, a quiet confidence radiating from him. After exchanging some niceties, I leaned in close to Kevin's ear. I'm here to check on you. And? How'd it go? He asked in a hushed tone. You smell like perfume, I replied, arching an eyebrow. Kevin squinted playfully at me while lining up his next shot. It's from the perfume on the second shelf of your vanity. Third bottle from the right. You grabbed the wrong one, I teased. That's mine. I know, he said, right before sinking another flawless shot. Kevin was in his element, and I found myself captivated by the sight. I could watch him like this for hours, until my phone buzzed, snapping me back to reality. My mother-in-law's here, I told Kevin. He placed the cue down with a casual indifference. Great, we'll have soup. The moment we walked in, the rich aroma of coconut chicken soup greeted us. Come, già in Stati Uniti. Kevin's mother called out with a smile. Throughout dinner, she spoke in gentle tones, while Kevin remained mostly silent, quietly drinking his soup and nodding occasionally to show he was listening. Your brother hasn't been home much lately, she said softly. He's been staying in a hotel near the office. Things must be tough for him. Don't take it too far, okay? Kevin's voice was uncharacteristically warm when he answered. I know. I haven't done anything extreme. There simply hadn't been time. Remember, it's fine to push him a bit, but don't overdo it, she cautioned. Kevin nodded again, calmly. Then I chimed in, teasing. Kevin's the same. If things get stressful, he doesn't come home either. His mother laughed. Then go out and have some fun. Your Uncle Bridgman's racetrack just got renovated. Kevin, why don't you give it a spin? Kevin, ever agreeable, said, Sure, why not? After dinner, Kevin walked his mother out. When he returned, I asked, You drank 2 bowls of soup tonight. Should I learn how to make it for you? He tousled my hair, making a mess of it. No, if I have it too often, it'll lose its appeal, he replied lazily. But tonight's was good. Though for some reason, after finishing it, I feel like messing with Lester Bridgman even more. I blew a few stray strands of hair away from my face. You're just being coy. Kevin chuckled, watching me carefully as he slowly smoothed out my hair, his fingers moving gently through the strands. I gazed up at him, thinking back to the dream. Even after 3 years with Kevin, I only understood the surface of his business dealings. But one thing had become clearer than ever. Kevin was surrounded by wolves. The hostility was palpable, just like I'd heard outside the restroom. Because of that dream, I had tried so many times to urge Kevin to show some restraint, yet I never managed to voice the warning. Maybe it really wasn't meant to be said. But logically, well, I had left all logic behind the moment I didn't barge into that restroom to throw my shoes at those men. Beyond that, there was no sense left where Kevin was concerned. So I asked him, What if you lose? Kevin's reply was nonchalant. Like my father? If I fall, I'll fall from the highest point, dirty and ruined, with nothing to my name. I blinked, startled. That dream surged back into my mind with vivid clarity. Kevin had summed up his own fate perfectly. As for my absence from that vision, well, that was because, even before his empire collapsed, he had already secured a way out for me. I had been safely tucked away in a peach blossom sanctuary all along. And what if I asked you not to gamble? I whispered, my heart racing. Finally the words had come out. After all this time, I had finally said it. Kevin went quiet for a moment before speaking. You've always supported me. I shook my head gently. Just once, can't you support me? Kevin didn't respond. He continued to comb through my hair, smoothing it out little by little. I wrapped my arms around his waist, unwilling to let go, and let my hands roam, searching for something. How is it I can't find a single card? I grumbled. I lost it all playing pool, Kevin said with a smirk. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, someone actually got the best of you? Who? Lester Bridgman, he replied, amusement dancing in his eyes. I paused. What happened? Kevin chuckled again. Before you arrived, he and I were playing pool together, and I lost everything. You two were actually hanging out together? I asked, surprised. Mr. Johnson arranged it, Kevin explained. And one little game cost you that much? I teased. We're going racing next, aren't we? I'll make it up there with a bigger bet. I lost my smile and warned him seriously, don't pull anything on Lester Bridgman during the race. Kevin let out a lazy hum of agreement. Are you mad? I asked. Curious, Kevin said, his gaze narrowing slightly. I'm curious what kind of sweet nothings Lester fed you during your little meeting at the club. How do you know everything? I asked, playing along. Kevin's fingers resumed their play in my hair as if trying to distract himself. Are you asking how I know about your meeting with Lester Bridgman? Or about the sweet nothings he whispered? I seized the opportunity, teasing him back. So you think Lester Bridgman is quite the charmer, huh? Maybe that's why I find him kind of cute? The words barely left my mouth before I frowned in disgust at my own ridiculousness. Kevin laughed out loud. It was obviously a lie. How could I like someone Kevin didn't? The only reason I was saying these absurd things was to lull Kevin into letting go of his grudge against Lester. No more pretending. Time to pick out some racing gear. The grandstands were practically empty. I sat next to Violet Smith, while the other girlfriends, dates, or sisters of the rich young men had gathered on the opposite side, far from us. None of them dared come near me. Ah, the infamy of arrogance. Why don't you go over and hang out with them? I asked Violet, nodding toward the others. Violet gave a bitter smile. They'll give me a hard time. Really? I give her a hard time too. Oh right, that wine didn't end up on her. Because you're dating Lester Bridgman? I asked. She nodded. Yes, Lester. He's quite popular. Just hang in there, I said, my words sounding dismissive. Sooner or later, the obstacles will be gone. It was a weak attempt at encouragement, but also the truth. We were nearing the end of the story after all, and the main characters always get their happy endings. Funny, isn't it? A villain like me giving the protagonist advice on waiting patiently for their bright future. Violet had already started to see me as the kind sister-in-law, and we chatted quietly for a while, though I wasn't really listening. My ears were filled with the deafening roar of tires screeching against the pavement, drowning out everything else. My eyes were glued to Kevin's red Formula car. For several long moments, my mind went blank. The high-speed race was so intense. I wondered if centrifugal force might suddenly hurl someone out and send them careening under the wheels. My eyelids twitched with anxiety. The sparks flying from the tires created a fiery spectacle. I was so focused on that single car that when Violet asked me, her voice tight with worry, "Who's driving that blue car next to the red one?" It took me a moment to remember. Lester Bridgman. Before I could answer, a deafening crash cut me off. Red and blue collided, leaving wreckage in their wake. Kevin hurt his hand. Lester's injury was worse. He hurt his leg. Kevin Thompson and I were sitting on the hospital bench when his mother rushed in, her hands cupping his face as she anxiously scanned him up and down. "How are you, sweetheart? Does your head hurt?" "Mom, the injury's here," Kevin drawled, dragging out his words as he pointed to his arm. His mother nodded quickly, brushing him off lightly. I see it. Tara," she turned to me, "I'm going to check on his brother. Take care of him, okay?" "Of course," I replied with a nod. She patted Kevin's shoulder reassuringly. "Don't worry, it's nothing serious. Don't beat yourself up about it. Accidents happen in everything we do." As she turned to leave, Kevin made a half-hearted attempt to reach out, as if wanting to stop her, but his arm barely lifted before it fell back into place. He masked the gesture quickly, turning to me with his usual cool demeanor. "Let's go home." On the drive home, I didn't utter a single word. "Are you mad?" Kevin asked, glancing down at me, trying to read my expression. I finally broke my silence with a sharp reprimand. "Your driving was terrible." Kevin froze for a moment, clearly caught off guard. I had never spoken to him so harshly before, certainly not in all our time together. "You scared me half to death," I added, my voice trembling with the emotion I had been holding back. Kevin bent down slightly, so his eyes were level with mine, guilt etched across his face. "I'm sorry I worried you, Tara. That wasn't my intention. Where did you go wrong?" I demanded, raising an eyebrow. Kevin hesitated before admitting, "I took the corner too fast." I nodded. "Exactly. Tara, but..." Kevin began, lifting his uninjured hand and gently brushing his thumb across my lips, smudging my lipstick in the process. As he smeared it across my face, a mischievous smile tugged at the corners of his lips, and he chuckled, amused by his own antics. "Kevin, what's wrong with you?" I muttered, shaking my head. "But even though I knew I was going too fast," he confessed, his tone turning serious, "I didn't slow down. I let it happen, and that's why I ended up crashing into Lester Bridgman." I had always known Kevin had a wild streak, but it never bothered me before. Now I was furious. Truly furious. When I first entered the racetrack and saw Lester Bridgman's car, its wheels still intact, I thought Kevin had finally listened to me. But no, he had pulled off something even more reckless. My face tightened. "Didn't I tell you not to pull anything on Lester Bridgman?" Kevin's voice softened, almost apologetic. There was no plan. But in that moment, yes, I did it on purpose. Tears welled up in my eyes, falling uncontrollably. "You don't listen to me anymore." Kevin looked startled, his usual confidence replaced by a rare vulnerability. "You're saying you think I'm bad now?" "No." I was starting to feel confused myself. Following the story's original path, Kevin was supposed to suffer. Trying to steer him away from that led to his injury. Being the villain's wife wasn't easy. It was exhausting. I kicked off my shoes and ran upstairs, my face smeared with lipstick. Kevin caught me halfway, pulling me into a hug, his voice soft and pleading. "Tara, I'm really sorry." He held me with one arm, and it was easy to slip out of his grip. But as I took a few steps, I suddenly remembered that bittersweet chicken soup I had made for him a few nights ago, and I found myself turning back. Wrapping my arms around him, I sighed inwardly. I had no backbone when it came to Kevin, Couldn't even stay mad at him for long. Pathetic. It was cold. I climbed off Kevin's chest and fumbled for the remote. I had turned up the air conditioning earlier, trying to make Kevin more comfortable with his injuries, but now I was freezing. I found the remote and grabbed my phone too. It was 2 in the morning. Pulling a shawl over my shoulders, I quietly padded over to the study, turned on a small desk lamp, and began scrolling through my phone in the soft glow of the light. I debated grabbing Kevin's phone to snoop a little. Maybe there were other girls he had been texting, but just as I was considering it, my phone buzzed unexpectedly. The sound, faint as it was in the still of the night, made my heart skip a beat. I fumbled, nearly dropping it, and answered the call without checking the caller ID. "Hello, sis-in-law." The voice on the other end was shaky, like they couldn't believe I had actually picked up. It was a female voice, trembling as if on the verge of tears. The word sis-in-law made me instinctively think of Lester Bridgman, but when I listened more closely, I realized it wasn't him. It was a woman. "Violet Smith?" I asked, surprised. "Yes, it's me," she sobbed, the sound of her crying barely muffled. I sighed. "Can you stop crying first? It's weird to hear that in the middle of the night." Once she had composed herself enough to speak, Violet slowly explained what had happened. She had been tricked, abandoned in the middle of nowhere at this ungodly hour, with no way to reach Lester. His phone was out of service, her friends' phones were off, and her own battery was about to die. Desperate, she had called me. "Fine. I'll go get her." After all, I had sabotaged her case last week. This seemed like karma coming back around. By the time I found Violet Smith, it was already 3 in the morning. She curled up in the back seat, still shaken, while I took the opportunity to probe for information. "Do you know a man named Mandel King?" I asked. No, I don't think so. But I might have seen his name on Lester Bridgman's contact list. They've done some business together." "Why?" Violet sounded confused. "Oh, nothing," I lied, trying to sound casual. "I thought I saw the two of you together, but it must have been someone else. No big deal." I had planned to drop her off at her apartment and leave, but then I saw the wheelchair. Sitting in the wheelchair, with his leg in a cast, was Lester Bridgman. Violet jumped out of the car and ran to him. Lester let out a sigh of relief, his face still pale with lingering fear. "I was about to call the police." Violet pointed back toward me. "Sis-in-law brought me home." Lester looked over, his expression softening. He nodded politely. "Thank you, sis-in-law." "That's it? That's all the thanks I get?" I teased. Lester's eyes twinkled with amusement. "What? You took 2 of Kevin's cards, didn't you?" I shot back, barely able to hold back a smile. Lester chuckled. "For your 3-year anniversary, I'll give you a double-sized gift to make up for it." He was too easy to mess with. Just as I was about to get back into the car, Lester called out to me again. "What are you two planning for your anniversary?" "What, trying to sneak a peek at Kevin's schedule?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. Lester sighed, tapping his injured leg. "Yeah, I want to know so I can figure out if I can relax and heal properly." I rolled my eyes, closing the car door. "Focus on resting." Lester smiled thoughtfully and nodded. When I tiptoed back into bed, Kevin was still fast asleep. But as soon as the sun rose, Kevin wasted no time in pulling me upright. "Tell me the truth," he said. I blinked in surprise. "You knew?" Kevin absent-mindedly tugged my falling strap back up to my shoulder. There wasn't much point in keeping secrets from him, anyway. So I told him everything. Kevin's reaction was nonchalant. "That's it?" "Yep. But I might be able to squeeze a bit more out of Lester as a thank you." Kevin gave me a sly smile. "You said his phone was out of service, not switched off?" That's what Violet said. She thinks he was busy dealing with something and only saw the missed calls later. Kevin scoffed. "Working at the hospital in the middle of the night. How diligent of him." "What's with you?" I poked his chest. "Mr. Thompson, we're late." Kevin rested his forehead against my shoulder, his voice drowsy. "I don't feel like going to work." "But you're the boss," I reminded him. "I can't sign anything with this hand," he said lazily. "Your left hand is injured, not your right." Kevin seemed to think it over for a moment, then smiled mischievously. "Remember that island I said I'd buy you? How about we go check it out instead?" I immediately gave in. Sure. What's so great about going to work, anyway? The deafening sound of the helicopter's rotors filled the air, and I instinctively buried myself deeper into Kevin's chest. He adjusted his position, wrapping one arm around me to block the noise while making sure I could still see the vast scenery unfolding beneath us. Kevin was unusually quiet. His deep, observant eyes seemed distant, almost empty. I glanced at him for a moment before turning my attention back to the view. If I calculated correctly, our 3-year anniversary would fall while we were still on the island. It seemed like Kevin had been planning this getaway for quite some time. The villa on the island was pristine, with sparkling windows and spotless floors. If it weren't for Kevin's injury forcing him to take time off, we rarely would have had the chance to share breakfast together like this. It felt strangely nostalgic. In the mornings, I would groggily make my way downstairs, and every time I saw Kevin sitting quietly on the sofa, I would wake up instantly. I'd linger at the top of the stairs, watching him, especially if the sunlight was streaming in through the windows just right. I found myself looking forward to the sound of the alarm more and more. But one morning, the alarm hadn't even gone off yet when I heard faint sounds next to me. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but then I realized it was Kevin speaking softly. I was still half asleep, barely processing what he was saying. Something about an urgent matter that needed his attention. Something about leaving me here to enjoy myself a little longer. Something about... I jolted awake, my heart pounding. But when I looked around, Kevin was gone. The housekeeper came in and spoke to me, but her words were vague and confusing. I rushed back to the bedroom to grab my phone, only to find it had been taken. A chill ran through me. I cornered one of the security guards. I want to go back. He remained professional, almost indifferent. Mr. Thompson will come to pick you up. I grabbed a handful of jewelry, but after thinking it over, I put it down. Then I picked up my eyeshadow palette, but remembering how hard it had been to find that shade, I set it back down as well. Finally, I hurled a pillow at the wall. Kevin Thompson, you can go to hell. The housekeeper timidly reminded me. Ma'am, the security cameras are still on. They'll transmit everything. That's exactly why I'm yelling. If they were off, what would be the point? Let him hear it. Still so unsatisfied. I knew why Kevin had taken my phone. Without it, I couldn't just summon a bunch of male models to keep me company. But in reality, there were no models. I was stuck with playing with the cat, watering the plants, gaming, and watching downloaded movies. It was relaxing but terribly boring. Was Kevin going after Lester Bridgman now? The thought made me grind my teeth in frustration. Hadn't Kevin heard a single word I said? The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I wasn't going to tolerate him anymore. But would my presence even stop him? Going back would be a different story. How much is Kevin paying you? I'll offer triple and you'll listen to me. I tried bribing the staff. They just shook their heads and smiled politely. I went back to my video games, losing myself in the little world I had created. When I got tired of that, I wandered around the island, turning it into a replica of the one I had built in Animal Crossing. Just as I was about to finish my masterpiece, a notification popped up, the first interaction I'd seen in ages. I smirked. Kevin's plan had a flaw. It was Violet Smith who had reached out to me. I furiously typed away in the chat box, but the moment I saw the message from the other side, I froze. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, and I slowly pressed delete. After the race, Violet Smith and Lester Bridgman had gotten engaged, which is why she had recently switched to calling me sis-in-law. But now, she reverted to a more formal and distant title. Miss Tara. Her message came through sharp and cold. Did you know Mr. Thompson is currently under investigation for economic crimes? My mind blanked for a moment, and then my hands began to tingle. I put down what I was holding and rubbed them vigorously until they turned red, but the numbness persisted. Violet continued to explain who had filed the charges, and that's when I saw the name, Mandel King. This wasn't right. None of it was supposed to go this way. In the original storyline, after I threw the wine at Violet Smith during the party, she was supposed to cross paths with Mandel King, who would become darkened by his unrequited love for her. Mandel King and Kevin Thompson were meant to join forces. But none of that happened. I never spilled that wine. Violet never met Mandel King. Therefore, the whole premise for Mandel's descent into darkness, and his partnership with Kevin, didn't exist. And yet, here we were, with Mandel King targeting Kevin Thompson as if the story had taken a leap off a cliff. It made no sense. According to the plot, Lester Bridgman should have been the first to suffer, not Kevin. But now, the story had skipped over Lester's downfall entirely, fast-forwarding to Kevin's inevitable crash. That party, the glass of wine I didn't throw. It all came back to me. I had altered the course of events from the very beginning. I was the one who had accelerated Kevin Thompson's destruction. Footsteps echoed behind me. The buzzing in my head abruptly stopped, and the world fell into a tense silence. I slowly turned around, only to be met with a familiar smiling face. Sis-in-law. Lester Bridgman stood there, his expression gentle, but there was something unsettling behind his eyes. I didn't come too late, did I? I did promise you a gift for your 3rd anniversary. I stared at Lester, his smile never faltering, but his eyes. They were empty. There was something wrong with him. The dread rose quickly in my chest. He hadn't lied. He was here to deliver a gift. All those exclusive handbags and pieces of jewelry could easily make up for the cards Kevin had lost. But more than that, the reason I was even able to fly back home was thanks to Lester's private plane. As Lester sat next to me, impeccably dressed, I couldn't help but glance at his legs. Your leg healed quickly. He chuckled. I could have dodged your brother's car that day, but I didn't. His voice grew quieter as he continued. After the accident, I hid in the hospital. It made Kevin let his guard down. It was you, I whispered, realization dawning. Not just me, he corrected. I worked with King. He handled things in the open, while I maneuvered in the shadows. Why would he listen to you? Lester smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. The payoff was big enough. The plan was thorough enough. He couldn't resist taking the gamble. It wasn't just thorough, I muttered. It was ruthless. Lester took a slow sip of his drink, lost in thought for a moment, before looking me straight in the eyes. Sis-in-law, I had a dream once. In that dream, Kevin would beat me so badly I'd barely survive. Eventually, I'd rise again, but the pain, it was unbearable. I won't let that happen again. If I have the chance, I'll crush him first. And then, I'll deal with Mandel King. The sudden display of malice from the usually composed and gentlemanly Lester caught me off guard. In this moment, Lester seemed more like the villain than Kevin ever had. I turned my head away, struggling to process the fact that Lester was just as much a puppet of the story as the rest of us. Sis-in-law, Lester's voice softened. You're not surprised, are you? Because you and we're the same. I snapped my gaze back to him, alarmed by his words. Lester smiled knowingly. At that party, why was it your dress that got ruined instead of Violet Smith's? He knew. Lester had realized that night that something had gone wrong with the story, and his suspicions had landed on me. When we met at the club, were you testing me? I asked. Yes, he admitted. You were acting completely different from before. That's when I knew I was right. I looked at his long fingers. The ring that had once adorned his middle finger was gone. I let out a cold laugh. In your dream, Mandel King nearly harmed Violet Smith, didn't he? Yet here you are teaming up with him. If she knew you could just brush off such a grudge. Lester cut me off, a bitter smile twisting his lips. Yes, I've become ruthless. And I'm paying the price for it now, aren't I? I hesitated. So, does Violet Smith really know? No, Lester replied, his voice quiet. She has no idea about what happened behind the scenes. All she knows is that I've turned into someone cruel and dangerous. She's so terrified of me now that she won't even come near me. He paused, his gaze growing distant. That's why I came to pick you up. I promised her I wouldn't let any of this touch you, but she's still scared of me. Violet had fallen for Lester because he was once kind and gentle. But the Violet of this timeline never saw the events that would have led her to truly understand him. To her, this new Lester was someone she didn't recognize. A stranger, cold and unyielding. Lester rubbed the spot on his finger where his ring had once been and asked, his tone dark, Kevin is ruthless, cunning and shameless. What is there to like about him? He was clearly asking me. I don't like his ruthlessness, his cunning, or his shamelessness, I answered, shrugging. But that's who he's always been. What can I do about it? The good news? Kevin Thompson had never changed. The bad news? He had always been a bastard. Lester laughed, his shoulders shaking uncontrollably. Are you okay? I asked stiffly. Lester's laughter subsided, and he gave me a wooden smile. I'm fine. From now on, I'll be sleeping soundly at night. But I'm surprised you haven't clawed at my face with your nails yet. I gritted my teeth. Things aren't the same anymore. Not the same. Lester Bridgman had changed the story and lost the love of his life. I had changed the story and pushed Kevin Thompson closer to his demise. I was too clever for my own good. After the plane landed and I was seated in the car, I found myself no closer to finding a way to save Kevin. The long journey had given me more than enough time, yet I couldn't think of a single solution. In the dream, it had felt just like this, completely hopeless. Only now did I truly understand the determination behind Lester Bridgman's refusal to relive that nightmare. The pain had been too much. The cost too high. No wonder Kevin had cut me off from the outside world. Living in fear was far worse than boredom. I turned my head to the window, staring at the passing scenery with empty eyes. That was until 2 police cars sped by with their sirens wailing. My gaze sharpened, and I clenched my fists, twisting the fabric of my dress in my hands. Don't be nervous, Lester said calmly. Where are you taking me? I demanded. Home, of course. Where else? He replied almost mockingly. Is Kevin there? Do you think he'd be there? The investigation is over already? Lester leaned back in his seat, closing his eyes for a long moment before answering. It must be. I haven't bothered keeping up with it these last few days. When the car stopped in front of the house, Lester didn't get out. He remained seated in the back, barely moving. I won't be coming in. I walked away slowly, but before I could take more than a few steps, I heard the sharp slam of a car door behind me, followed by the hurried click of footsteps. Lester marched past me, heading straight for the villa. As the door opened, I caught sight of someone sitting on the sofa. He turned his head in response to the noise. Kevin Thompson. His suit was neatly pressed, his tie perfectly knotted. He looked impeccable, completely at odds with the image of a man who had just been through an ordeal. Tara? His eyes found mine first, before glancing at Lester. The bodyguard said it was you who went to pick her up, but I wasn't sure if I believed him. Lester nodded stiffly. Yes, I picked up sis-in-law. Kevin turned back to me, his tone gentle. Tara, I didn't mean to leave you behind. I just got caught up in some trouble I needed to deal with. It was tricky, but I managed to handle it. That guy named King tried to set a trap for me, but I sent him away instead. Kevin's words were meant for me, but every syllable felt like it was intended for Lester's ears. Lester took a deep breath and spoke with an unnerving calmness. You've won again, haven't you, big brother? Again? Kevin's face showed genuine confusion. Lester paused, lighting a cigarette before continuing. King isn't the only one who's lost to you. Kevin glanced at the cigarette, then plucked it out of Lester's hand and put it between his own lips. He turned to me and said, Tara, just this one. I scoffed but said nothing. Lester stayed for dinner that night. He acted as if nothing was amiss, his demeanor completely natural. If I hadn't known better, I would have thought everything between us was perfectly fine. Kevin barely smoked the cigarette before putting it out. He then turned to me and asked why I wasn't wearing any jewelry. I was going to wear the necklace Lester gave me, I explained, but I didn't have anything to match it with, so I decided to go without. Lester looked up. Next time, I'll get you a matching outfit. Kevin chuckled. No one called out anyone's bluff. Even though beneath the surface, tensions were boiling over, on the outside, the two of them remained as composed as ever. When their eyes met, the waters were perfectly still. Peace for now? Perhaps. We'd see what the future held. After that dinner, Kevin disappeared for a while. I searched the house and eventually spotted him through the large floor-to-ceiling windows. Kevin had taken off his suit jacket, leaving him in a slightly loose but still elegant shirt. He sat on the terrace, his hair tousled by the wind, a faint air of defeat hanging around him. Tara Taylor, you told me to go to hell, Kevin muttered. I leaned out, peering down at him. We're only on the second floor. It's barely a 3-meter drop. You'll survive. Kevin smirked. The guilty always complain first. Want me to push you? I teased. Sure, he said with a lazy shrug. I reached out and pretended to shove him. My hand rested on his shoulder, but he didn't even flinch. No reaction at all. He was completely defenseless. But if I push you off, who'll answer my questions? I asked, my tone turning serious. When did you first realize something was wrong? Kevin smiled, a knowing glint in his eye. Didn't you tip me off? You said Lester's phone wasn't connecting that time, and I started noticing how unusually busy he'd become. When I looked into it, I realized his business dealings didn't justify the late nights and stress. So I decided to keep an eye on him. Is that all? I pressed. Kevin leaned his head back, letting the breeze wash over him for a moment before replying. My mother also mentioned that Lester hadn't been home much lately and warned me not to go too hard on him. But I was busy with my own affairs at the time. Didn't have the bandwidth to mess with him. And then you told me to stop gambling altogether. So I was even less inclined to deal with him. You remember that? I blinked, surprised. Kevin mimicked my tone with a smirk. Didn't you say, can't you support me just once? I giggled, remembering the conversation. Well, if there's one, there must be two. Kevin lazily replied, fine, we can do that. Beat up whoever you want, buy whatever you want. I got a bit too excited. If you listen to me, does that mean I wasn't just being too clever for my own good? Kevin looked genuinely surprised. You've been reflecting on your actions? Maybe it's Lester Bridgman's fault after all. I could live with that, I said, quickly aligning myself with Kevin's side. But then I paused, realizing we were veering off track again. Wait, weren't we supposed to leave Lester alone? This time you almost lost to him. Quietly blame him, Kevin suggested, laughing softly. I stopped myself from spiraling into mischief again and changed the subject. I thought you two were going to have a showdown. Didn't expect dinner to end things. My brother is pretty clever, Kevin admitted, a rare note of respect in his voice. Fighting wouldn't have been worth it. Besides, dinner was more fun. The same old scoundrel. A curious thought crossed my mind. Do you think my mother-in-law? Kevin smiled knowingly. I also think she was trying to warn me. A sudden idea struck me. Shouldn't you talk to her about it? Kevin shook his head. Those two have a lot to talk about. I poked him. Are you sure? Absolutely. I poked him again. Need me to come with you? Aren't you always with me? Kevin's voice softened. It had only been 3 years, but he spoke as if it had been a lifetime. 3 years, then another 3 years. That's how forever is built. Extra. Kevin Thompson never liked the idea of the arranged marriage his grandfather had set up with Tara Taylor. In fact, it had little to do with Tara herself. Whether she was Tara Brown or Tara Gray, he still wouldn't have wanted to marry her. The core issue was that Kevin had never entertained the thought of getting married in the first place. Their few encounters had been brief and uneventful, with no sparks flying between them. Kevin was cold toward her, and Tara seemed equally indifferent. The two of them had already discussed canceling the engagement, and the moment they settled on the matter was at a bar. The dim, moody lighting of the bar gave Tara an air of distant elegance, the kind that kept people at arm's length. Kevin ordered a drink but couldn't be bothered to drink it, the ice slowly melting in his glass. Let's get this over with today, Kevin said flatly. Sure, Tara replied casually, nodding without much care. Remember, you'll say it was my fault, Kevin finished for her. Good, Tara murmured. Just as Kevin was about to ask if there was anything else, Tara stood up with her usual grace, leaving behind a simple, I'm off. But her lipstick fell. With a soft thunk, it rolled across the floor, the sound drowned out by the music in the background, until it stopped by Kevin's feet. He bent down, picked up the small black cylinder, and sighed before getting up to follow her. Tara hadn't left yet. She had headed toward the restroom instead. Kevin leaned against the wall, waiting. The restroom was quiet, save for the occasional sound of running water. After a moment, the water stopped, and he could hear Tara's voice through the thin walls. She was on the phone. I almost gave myself away earlier. When Kevin Thompson started talking about breaking off the engagement, I nearly dropped my glass. Thank God I managed to hold it together, or he would have seen right through me. What? You think I didn't give anything away? Phew, that's a relief. Scared me half to death. Ugh, why doesn't he like me at all? I hate pretending I don't like him. You want me to make the first move? No way, absolutely not. I'd rather die than throw myself at him. Oh wait, where's my lipstick? That thing was huge. Where'd it go? Kevin stood there, staring down at the lipstick in his hand, gently twisting it absent-mindedly. When Tara finally emerged from the restroom, she froze in her tracks, her face turning bright red the moment she laid eyes on him. It was only then that Kevin realized he probably should have stepped away while she was inside. Next time, he thought. He'd remember that for next time. Your lipstick, Kevin said, his voice calm as he handed it to her. Tara was too mortified to care about the lipstick anymore. She had lost face, and that was far more important. All she could think about was getting out of there. But first, she had to walk the long hallway with Kevin's eyes undoubtedly on her back. But Kevin hadn't forgotten his reason for following her. He still held the lipstick in his hand and continued to walk at an unhurried pace behind her. Tara, on the other hand, seemed desperate to escape, slipping out through a side door that led to a quieter street. Not an ideal place to catch a cab. He might have to drive her home. Tara, Kevin called after her. She didn't stop, slamming the door shut behind her, leaving him momentarily on the other side. Through the glass, he could see her being harassed by a group of men who were persistently waving their phones in her face, clearly asking for her number. By the time Kevin stepped outside, he heard Tara snap, "Get lost. I'm married, stop bothering me." Tara. Kevin's voice was low and slightly hoarse, as though he was holding back a rising irritation. Tara turned, quickly shaking off the unwanted attention. She walked over to Kevin and smoothly hooked her arm through his, glaring at the men in front of them. "Husband," she said with a cold edge to her voice. "Go ahead and punch them." The end. Thanks for stopping by. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any new videos.